Okay, hi everybody. I'm gonna do a just kind of quick look through of the books that I picked up at Cartoons Crossroads Columbus a week ago. Anybody who's never been to CXC, can I just start with highly recommending that you find some time to go to CXC. It is a great show. It is free. There are always really, really amazing guests and conversations happening. And Columbus is a very cool city. These are some of the things that I found. I'm doing this on my phone, so we'll see how this goes. Jaime Hernandez was there, and I could not afford any of his amazing con sketches, but I could afford the zine of his con sketches, so I picked that one up, and these are awesome. Like, he's just such a master. So very, very cool to get this, and he was a nice fella. I also picked up at the Ad House Books booth, I picked up the new Pope hats. Hartley Lynn is somebody whose work I really enjoy. And yeah, I could look at his comics all day. Very sort of, I want to say traditional, but I don't know if that's the right thing to say. Definitely what I think of when I think of like sort of alt indie comics. But he's got so much talent. So exciting to pick up the new Pope hats. I also picked up from Ad House Books The Freak by Matt Lesniewski, and this book is just bananas. The level of detail, it's kind of a weirdly sized book, but the level of detail that he puts into his comics, the story's almost not even look at those cool legs. The story's almost not even the point of this, but just you can just get lost in the drawing, sort of like Jeff Darrow. So I love this book. He is one hell of a cartoonist, and very cool to have this. But the book of the show for me was The Seeker by Liz Velasco. This knocked me on my butt. This is sort of a, I guess I want to say it's a coming-of-age story with some really creepy overtones. Kids hanging out in the woods, which is something that as an East Coast kid, I definitely did my fair share of teenage time hanging out in the woods. And this was not on my radar at all before CXC, which is one of the beautiful things about going to a show like that is that you can find something like this and it owns. And Liz was very, very nice and super glad I picked this up. The Seeker, like, go find it. Best thing. I also picked up Maids #1, which I enjoyed. Katie Skelly is making a big book, so I just picked up. She had a couple of issues, I think, but I just picked up the first one kind of to get a sampling. I'll pick up the bigger one when it goes. But again, she was a nice person to talk to, and I was very, very excited to kind of check this out. I picked up a couple of books by Brian Canini. He was a very, very prolific cartoonist there. He had so much stuff. And so I did the 3 for 5. And my favorite one was 2 stories, especially this first story, Hand City. I'm not even going to turn into it that much, but it's sort of a body horror type thing. Definitely put me in mind of almost like a Stephen King story. And that was very cool. So talented cartoonist, very prolific. Those 2 things usually mean very cool stuff for the future. So I highly recommend checking him out. I picked up the new Tosya Tales, or I guess the first issue. My son is kind of a fantasy nerd, and so I thought this would be a cool one for him, and he's looked through it. The map is what sold him. Like, I think he really liked looking at that. And the map is, I think, an intricate part of like what makes these comics. I recognize a lot of the cartoonists that are on the masthead and even off the masthead. So this is definitely a thing that's been on my radar a little bit, and I'm glad to get to sample it when I can pry it out of my son's hands. No Child Left Behind. I'm a teacher, and so whenever I see a teacher who makes comics, I want to support that. And Stu Race, I think, is a Columbus, Ohio public school teacher. And so he did this insane sort of vicious satire of where teachers are right now and the idea of like we're being asked to, some of the things we're being asked to do. And it's cool. I think he takes no prisoners, and I definitely know that this is something that teachers are talking about. So again, vicious and a little bit of truth underneath it, and I was glad to get it. I also picked up, couldn't afford therapy, so I made this. I'm going to be honest, the title of this is what got it to me. Lawrence Lindell. One of the cool things about CXC is that they make really, really sure that they are covering all sorts of cartoonists, all cartoonists from all different backgrounds. And this one was a cool find. The back's pretty cool too. So yes, I can think of a lot of kids that I know that are going to be interested in this art style too. So very cool. Glow Summer Special. This is kind of a mainstream book, but I didn't really know that they were making a ton of Glow comics. I love the show. And the cartoonist who did all the interior work, Liz Sterl, was there. She was very nice. And yeah, Glow is a great show. I'm glad it's coming back. This is some nice action-y, cartoony stuff. Yeah. So fun. I'm going to try and track down maybe some other Glow comics in the future. This one is my wife's. My wife collects cookbooks, so when she saw this Ramen Cookbook, she had to have it. Sarah Bakan, I hope that's how you pronounce her name, is the artist behind it. And I've always thought that, like, comics and cookbooks could be a really natural pairing, just from like the step-by-step nature of the way you read a comic and the step-by-step nature by way that you put together a recipe. So yes, beautiful to look at. I know this is living on my wife's shelf, but I will definitely borrow it from time to time. I picked up The Giver. P. Craig Russell was there. Russell does a lot of these adaptations. He's done some Neil Gaiman adaptations before. His Coraline is worth a look. But I was definitely interested in The Giver because as a teacher of YA stuff, I know that The Giver offers a cartoonist a lot of opportunities, especially in the coloring and choices. Because if you've ever read The Giver, you know that color doesn't factor in until halfway through. And even then, it's sort of a important part of the story. So definitely Russell did a good job with that, and also a good job of preserving the ending of The Giver. So I've already got some kids asking to borrow this. I brought it into school, so even though this is signed and it usually sits on a shelf when I get something like that, it will definitely be grist for the classroom mill, and I'm glad of it. I'm very glad of it. It's a masterful adaptation. It's very, very good looking. All right, so finally, this is not new stuff, but there's a guy who comes to CXC and sells, he has a little corner, and he sells Indian underground books. So he had some underneath the table that were 3 for $5. So I just said, I'm going to pick 3 books that I know nothing about and check them out. Lucifer, I recognized Eddie Campbell and Paul Grist as being creators whose work I've enjoyed in the past. Phil Elliott, I don't really know. Trident Comics, again, not on my radar, so very cool to see. Firkin, Hunt Emerson cartooning. He is such a great I'm not even going to open this up because it's disgusting, but a lot of dirty comics in here drawn by somebody who has just a deft handling of cartoons and just funny looking drawings, and that's half the battle when you're talking about this stuff. Threat number 6. I had never heard of Threat before. I don't know Threat. It looks like it's sort of a son of Love and Rockets in that there's several different stories that are done in several different styles. Looks like it went on for quite a while, but yes, I had never really read it, so I'll sample it. And so those were the 3 books that I bought that were on the 3 for $5, but I also spent a little bit of money on this one right here, New Paltz Comics #1. This is Michael T. Gilbert, who did Mr. Monster. It's sort of a anthology of all different creators flexing their muscles. But the reason I was so interested in this, besides kind of meeting Russell or meeting Gilbert and really digging his stuff, is that I'm from down by New Paltz, and I just didn't know this existed. If I had known this existed when I was a kid, it would have blown my mind. So New Paltz Comics, I have the first issue. Very cool.